For centuries, the galaxy had known a fragile peace maintained by the powerful Galactic Council. Composed of the most advanced species in the universe, the Council was a beacon of hope, a collective force dedicated to keeping the peace and advancing civilization across the stars. Among the countless races, humanity, a relatively young species, had proven themselves quick learners. Earth had earned its place in the Council after decades of rapid technological advancement and diplomacy. Yet few knew how deep the corruption within the Council ran. Behind the closed doors of the Council chambers, a secret pact was being formed, a pact that would change the fate of humanity. A faction within the Council, consisting of older, more established species, feared the potential rise of humanity. They saw the rapid progress of the human race as a threat to their long-held dominance over the galaxy. Rather than fostering the growth of humanity as equals, they devised a dark plan to sabotage Earth's progress and limit the reach of the human race. The first act of betrayal came as a series of attacks on human colonies scattered across various star systems. At first, the attacks seemed random, isolated incidents that could be written off as pirate raids or natural disasters. But as the frequency and intensity of the assaults grew, a grim pattern emerged. Human settlements were hit with surgical precision, each attack targeting infrastructure, civilian populations, and key military outposts. Entire colonies were decimated overnight, leaving nothing but smoldering ruins in their wake. What Earth's leaders did not know, however, was that these attacks were not the work of rogue factions or external enemies. They were orchestrated by a covert alliance within the Council, operating in the shadows. The Council had promised Earth protection in exchange for strategic military alliances and trade agreements, but behind the scenes, they had long been plotting humanity's downfall. The attacks were no coincidence. The plan was simple: weaken humanity's reach in the galaxy and ensure their technological advancement would stall before they could pose a serious challenge to the established order. As the devastation spread across human colonies, the political and military leaders of Earth scrambled to respond. With the destruction of several major colonies, the situation on Earth grew more dire by the day. The media covered the stories of civilians lost in the attacks, but what the public didn't know was that the Council had controlled the flow of information. No one on Earth had yet realized the true extent of the betrayal. The Council's betrayal was carefully hidden behind layers of manipulation and lies. Then, one fateful day, a high-ranking human official, General Nathan Cole, received information that would shatter the illusion of peace. A decrypted message intercepted by Earth's intelligence revealed a damning truth. The Council had been complicit in the attacks. The message detailed the Council's secret involvement in sabotaging human colonies, a decision made by a select few species who feared humanity's growing influence. They had plotted against Earth, seeing it as a rising threat, and had acted to cripple it before it could reach its full potential. General Cole, along with a trusted few, went into immediate action. The betrayal was a blow that could not be ignored. For years, humanity had relied on the Council's promises of peace and protection, only to be stabbed in the back by the very institution that claimed to be their ally. The scales had tipped, and humanity now had a choice: accept the fate the Council had planned for them, or rise up and reclaim their future. The choice was clear. Humanity would not stand idly by while their future was stolen. They would fight for survival, for justice, and for the future they had earned. The betrayal would not go unanswered. The fury of humanity had been awakened, and the galaxy would soon know what it meant to challenge the indomitable spirit of mankind. The revelation of the Council's betrayal spread like wildfire across Earth. As the news broke, the shock turned to anger, and the anger turned to fury. General Nathan Cole, who had witnessed the devastating impact of the Council's manipulation firsthand, knew there could be no turning back. He had seen the pain in the eyes of the survivors from the destroyed colonies, the families that had been torn apart, and the warriors who had fought to defend their homes, only to watch them burn. This was no longer a matter of politics. It was personal. In the aftermath of the betrayal, Earth's leaders convened in a secret meeting deep within a hidden command center beneath the surface of the planet. The world's major military commanders, strategists, and key figures from the global government gathered, united by a single overwhelming goal. Humanity would not only survive the betrayal, they would make the Council pay for every life lost, every colony shattered, every hope destroyed. "We will not be pawns in their game any longer," General Cole said, his voice cold but determined. "The time for diplomacy has passed. Now we must show them who we truly are." The human alliance that formed in those tense days was a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. Earth's military, long praised for their technological innovation and strategic thinking, began to rapidly adapt their tactics. The human fleet was strengthened with experimental technologies that had never been deployed in battle, and new weapons, more advanced than anything the Council had ever encountered, began to roll off assembly lines. The human race was angry, but they were also resourceful, and that combination made them a formidable opponent. As plans for retaliation began to take shape, a key decision was made. The war would not be fought on Earth's soil, not at first. Humanity needed to show the galaxy that they could strike at the heart of the Council without hesitation, without mercy. Earth's fleet, including its most advanced ships, would engage the Council's forces directly in space, targeting key military bases and supply lines across the galaxy. For the first time in history, humanity's forces united as a single, cohesive military force. Different factions that had previously operated independently, factions that had fought against each other in regional conflicts, set aside their differences for the greater cause. The soldiers who had once been taught to defend their own homes now stood ready to defend the entire human race. The message was clear. Earth would no longer be weak. Humanity would not be destroyed. Humanity's fury would be unleashed upon those who dared to betray them. The first wave of attacks came swiftly and decisively. Human ships, equipped with newly developed stealth technology, launched surprise raids on Council strongholds, striking hard and fast before enemy forces even had a chance to react. Earth's military leaders knew that the Council would underestimate them, just as they had done for centuries. They used that to their advantage, hitting soft targets first, destabilizing the Council's infrastructure. The strategy was simple but effective. Disrupt their power, sow chaos, and demonstrate that humanity was capable of fighting on their terms, not the Council's. One of the first targets was a vital Council supply depot on the edge of Council-controlled space. It housed essential resources, including weapons and fuel, critical to sustaining their forces. When humanity's fleet attacked, they caught the Council completely off guard. In the blink of an eye, the depot was obliterated, sending shockwaves through the Council's military network. The Council, who had believed that humanity's forces were mere pawns, now realized that they were facing an adversary unlike any they had anticipated. The news of humanity's strike spread quickly across the galaxy, and with it an undeniable message. Humanity was no longer just a species to be used or manipulated. They were a force to be reckoned with. The first victory was not just a tactical win. It was a statement to the galaxy. The Council had made a grave mistake, and humanity's fury had only just begun. As humanity prepared for the next phase of their retaliation, there was a new sense of unity and resolve among Earth's people. They had been betrayed, yes, but they had also discovered something far more powerful: the strength to fight back. The galaxy would soon learn that when humanity's fury was unleashed, there was no turning back. The battle for the future of the galaxy had begun, and humanity had no intention of losing. The first true battle was set to unfold beyond Earth's atmosphere, a distance away from the planets humanity called home. The human alliance, forged through anger and a desire for justice, now prepared to make its mark on the galaxy. With the betrayal still fresh in their minds and the sting of loss lingering, humanity's forces were ready to strike back in ways the Council had never anticipated. Their first target was a massive Council-controlled fortress located in the outer rim of known space, a key military installation that the Council used to maintain dominance over its subjugated territories. The plan was simple: a coordinated assault with precision strikes to cripple the Council's ability to retaliate and to send a message to the galaxy. The human fleet, led by General Nathan Cole, was a mix of Earth's finest warships, now upgraded with cutting-edge technology that was both unexpected and brutal. Their stealth technology allowed them to approach the target without detection, and their new weaponry, devastating energy beams and experimental torpedoes, was a leap ahead of anything the Council had ever encountered. As the human ships moved into position, the tension was palpable. This wasn't just an attack, it was humanity's declaration that they would not be silenced. The Council's fortress, an imposing structure of metal and energy shields, loomed on the edge of space, unaware of the approaching storm. The humans knew that this strike would be the beginning of something far larger, but they also knew it was essential to demonstrate their power early on. The order was given. A single, synchronized wave of firepower was unleashed upon the Council fortress. For the first few seconds, there was only the silence of space. Then, the roar of battle broke through. The human ships fired their weapons, beams of concentrated energy slicing through the dark void, smashing into the fortress's outer defenses. Shields flickered and crackled under the intensity of the assault, but they couldn't hold. The human weaponry was simply too advanced, and the fortress was unprepared for such an overwhelming force. The Council's defensive systems scrambled to react, but it was too late. The first wave of attacks overwhelmed the fortress's primary shield generators, and the structure's outer defenses buckled under the pressure. Moments later, the human fleet deployed a volley of high-yield torpedoes that detonated against the fortress's walls with catastrophic results. The explosion sent shockwaves rippling through the surrounding space, and for a brief moment, the battlefield seemed to quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. When the smoke cleared, the once mighty Council installation was nothing more than a shattered shell. The destruction was total. The Council's response was immediate, but the damage had been done. Humanity's first strike had sent shockwaves through Council-controlled space, and word of the devastating assault spread faster than any could have imagined. The Council's military had been dealt a humiliating blow, one they couldn't simply ignore. General Cole watched from the command bridge of the flagship, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The destruction was immense, but it wasn't just the devastation that mattered, it was the message. Humanity had struck, not only with weapons but with purpose. The galaxy was now watching, and humanity's fury had been unleashed upon an unsuspecting target. The Council's military was no longer an indomitable force. Humanity had proven that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The victory was not without sacrifice. Several human ships had sustained heavy damage during the attack, and the cost of the operation had been high in terms of both resources and personnel. But there was no doubt in the minds of Earth's leaders. This was only the beginning. The Council had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now they would learn what it meant to face the full wrath of a species determined to reclaim its place in the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity would no longer be a passive player in the galactic game. They had taken the first step in a campaign that would alter the balance of power forever. And as the remains of the Council fortress drifted in space, a new chapter of galactic history began, one written by the fierce, unrelenting fury of humanity. The first strike had shattered the Council's arrogance, but it was only the beginning. What followed was a relentless campaign across the stars, a series of battles that proved humanity's fury was not just an isolated outburst, but a force that would tear through the galaxy, one enemy at a time. The Council, now reeling from the loss of one of its most important strongholds, quickly scrambled to regroup. Yet no amount of reinforcements or advanced technologies could prepare them for the relentless ingenuity and tenacity of humanity's forces. The humans, led by General Nathan Cole and his coalition of military leaders, had something the Council didn't: a burning drive to protect their future and exact revenge for the lives lost in their colonies. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something far greater: justice. The next few weeks saw a series of coordinated strikes on key Council facilities and supply chains. Each battle brought new challenges, but humanity adapted quickly. Earth's forces were made up of a mix of elite soldiers, tactical geniuses, and engineers whose creativity had allowed them to develop weapons the Council had never seen. They used the very weapons and ships the Council had stolen from them to inflict unimaginable damage. One such attack targeted a Council space station orbiting a barren planet. This station served as a hub for the Council's military communications, and destroying it would cripple their ability to coordinate their forces. The human fleet, split into smaller but highly effective strike groups, launched a series of rapid assaults, hitting the station from all angles. The Council, expecting an attack at their primary defense points, had fortified the outer hull of the station with thick layers of armor. But humanity, ever resourceful, had developed a new weapon specifically for such situations: high-frequency disruptor bombs capable of destabilizing even the strongest materials. As the bombs detonated against the station's hull, the very metal walls began to vibrate, shaking apart under the pressure of the human weaponry. The defenses cracked, and the station's internal systems went into a chaotic meltdown. The station's massive communication arrays short-circuited, leaving the Council unable to send orders or reinforcements. Within hours, the once proud military hub was nothing more than a drifting wreck, its command structure in ruins. The attack was swift, precise, and utterly devastating, a perfect example of humanity's capacity to adapt and innovate in the heat of battle. However, it wasn't just military might that won these battles. It was humanity's determination to never give up. In the face of overwhelming opposition, human forces continued to push forward. One of the most notable examples came from the humans encountered with a massive Council warship, the Fury's End, a flagship that had been terrorizing human colonies along the Outer Rim. The Fury's End was equipped with the most advanced weaponry the Council had ever produced, and it seemed unstoppable. For days, humanity's forces clashed with the warship's defenses. The Fury's End was a symbol of the Council's power, and it was an enemy unlike any human force had faced. But humanity had one thing the Council didn't: a willingness to risk everything. General Cole's strategy was to fight a war of attrition, drawing the warship closer to an asteroid field where its size would be a disadvantage. The humans baited the Fury's End into the field and used their superior maneuverability to launch a series of devastating hit-and-run strikes, exploiting every weakness in the massive ship's defenses. In the end, the Fury's End was crippled, its hull ruptured by a final barrage from a human battleship that had flown through the asteroid field at near-impossible speeds. The once mighty warship, now a floating carcass, became a symbol of the Council's diminishing power. Humanity had won the battle, and the Council had lost another of their key assets. As the campaign continued, the pattern became clear. Humanity was no longer a species to be taken lightly. The galaxy watched in awe as Earth's forces tore through Council strongholds, each battle more fierce and brutal than the last. No matter the odds, humanity pressed on, showing the galaxy that their will to fight, their ingenuity, and their unyielding spirit were stronger than any weapon the Council could throw at them. With every victory, humanity's confidence grew. They were no longer the weak, overlooked species they had once been. They were a force to be reckoned with. And the Council, they were beginning to realize just how deeply they had underestimated the fury of humankind. As humanity's fury continued to sweep through Council-controlled space, something unexpected began to happen. Each victory brought more than just tactical advantage. It revealed something deeper, something that would change the entire course of the war. In their relentless pursuit of vengeance, human forces began to uncover hidden truths, secrets that had been buried by the Council for centuries, secrets that, if revealed to the galaxy, would shatter the fragile illusion of peace the Council had worked so hard to maintain. It began when a human reconnaissance team, after a successful raid on a Council supply base, stumbled upon a trove of encrypted data files. The documents, initially thought to be of little importance, contained detailed accounts of Council operations going back to the early days of humanity's involvement in galactic affairs. As human scientists and intelligence officers decrypted the files, they began to piece together a disturbing pattern. The Council, far from being a neutral peacekeeping force, had been actively manipulating galactic politics to maintain their power and suppress potential threats. The most shocking discovery came from a series of covert communications that revealed the Council's true motivations behind their betrayal of humanity. The Council had always claimed that Earth's rapid technological advancements posed a threat to galactic stability, but the files told a different story. The Council's fear wasn't just about humanity's growing power. It was about the potential for humanity to rise and challenge the Council's established order. The Council had known for years that humanity, with their unyielding drive and unparalleled adaptability, would eventually outgrow their position as a fringe species, and when they did, the Council feared that humanity would seek to tear down the old system and establish a new, more egalitarian order. The betrayal wasn't a reaction to a specific action humanity had taken. It was a preemptive strike against a species the Council viewed as a threat to their own power. The Council's decision to attack human colonies, to sabotage their progress, had been made with cold calculation. They knew that humanity's growing influence in the galaxy could potentially spark a revolution, one that would replace the Council's authoritarian rule with a new balance of power. The Council's actions weren't simply an act of self-preservation. They were an attempt to crush a rising force before it could disrupt the status quo. This revelation set a fire burning in the hearts of humanity's leaders. The betrayal had been even more calculated and sinister than they had imagined. What made this discovery even more dangerous was the realization that there were likely other species, other allies of the Council, who had been complicit in these schemes. The Council's network of influence extended far beyond their own borders, and many of the galaxy's most powerful races had turned a blind eye to the suffering of human colonies, either out of fear or greed. With the truth now in their hands, humanity's resolve grew even stronger. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for justice on a cosmic scale. They were no longer merely avenging the destruction of their colonies. They were exposing the Council's corruption and their twisted manipulation of the galaxy's most vulnerable species. The secrets uncovered by humanity's forces gave them a moral high ground that could not be ignored. But the revelations didn't stop there. As more of the Council's hidden plans came to light, humanity's intelligence officers discovered that the Council had been involved in a wide range of illegal activities, from the forced displacement of entire species to the covert suppression of technological advancements in less advanced worlds. The Council's version of peacekeeping was a mask, a convenient lie that allowed them to control vast sectors of space under the guise of diplomacy. These revelations spread quickly, and soon, the galaxy's oppressed species, many of whom had long suffered under the Council's rule, began to take notice. The human rebellion, once seen as a fleeting spark of defiance, was now a beacon of hope. The Council, once an unshakable institution, was starting to crumble from the inside out, and humanity, armed with the truth, was leading the charge. The secrets uncovered by humanity did more than just fuel their war effort. They galvanized entire systems to rise up against the Council. What had once been isolated resistance movements began to form alliances, creating a united front against the Council's tyranny. The war had become more than just a fight for survival. It was now a battle for the future of the galaxy, and humanity was determined to lead the way. With the Council's secrets exposed to the galaxy and humanity's forces becoming a rallying point for oppressed species, the tides of war began to shift. What had once been a conflict confined to humanity's colonies had evolved into an interstellar struggle with far-reaching consequences. Across the galaxy, the resistance movements that had once been disjointed and isolated began to coalesce into a powerful alliance. Humanity's fury, now paired with the truth of the Council's corruption, had ignited a firestorm of rebellion, and the Council was caught off guard by the rapidly expanding resistance. General Nathan Cole, having led the charge with precision and determination, found himself not just commanding human forces, but also acting as a symbol of defiance. His name had become synonymous with hope, and his message was clear: the Council's reign of terror would not last. The sheer force of humanity's will, coupled with the unity they had forged with other oppressed species, had given them a strength the Council had never anticipated. The Council's military, once thought to be an unstoppable juggernaut, was now facing a multi-front war. Their forces, stretched thin as they tried to contain rebellions in multiple sectors, were faltering. The human fleet, bolstered by defectors from the Council's ranks and new allies, struck swiftly and decisively, executing operations with surgical precision. Each victory further weakened the Council's hold on the galaxy, as more and more systems joined the resistance or declared their neutrality in the face of the growing storm. One of the most pivotal moments came when a coalition fleet, led by humanity's most seasoned commanders, engaged the Council in a major battle near the galactic core. The Council's flagship, Imperium's Might, the symbol of their military dominance, was positioned to launch a counter-offensive that could wipe out the rebellion. But humanity had a secret weapon, something they had developed using their newfound alliances. Through a combination of advanced technology and guerrilla tactics, the human fleet managed to infiltrate the Council's defenses, crippling their primary supply lines and communication networks. The Imperium's Might was caught in the crossfire of a brilliant strategic maneuver. The resistance, led by human forces, launched a surprise assault on the flagship's weak points, focusing on its main propulsion system and shield generators. The Council's fleet, caught off guard by the boldness of the attack, was unable to respond effectively. In a matter of hours, the once invincible flagship was disabled, its systems offline, and its crew forced to surrender. It was a resounding victory, one that shattered the Council's morale and showed the galaxy that their once dominant military could be defeated. The aftermath of the battle was felt across the galaxy. The Council's position, which had once been unassailable, was now in peril. Defections among their ranks became more common as more species began to see the writing on the wall. The once unified Council began to fracture as its members turned on one another, some attempting to distance themselves from the growing rebellion, others trying to maintain their grip on power by making desperate alliances with the very factions they had oppressed for so long. Humanity, once seen as a weak and insignificant species, was now at the forefront of a galactic revolution. With every victory, their influence grew, and the Council's control over the galaxy weakened. The resistance was no longer just a spark. It had become a firestorm that consumed everything in its path. The tide had truly turned. Yet, despite their successes, humanity knew this war was far from over. The Council, though faltering, was still a powerful entity. Their reach extended deep into the galaxy, and there were still many loyalists who would fight to the bitter end. But with each passing day, the rebellion grew stronger, more unified. The Council's betrayal of humanity had set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. And now, the galaxy stood on the edge of a new era. Humanity, once underestimated, was leading the charge into that future. The Council's reign of tyranny was coming to an end, and humanity's fury would see it through. As the human-led resistance continued to dismantle the Council's strongholds, the galaxy braced itself for what would be the defining moment of the war. The Council, though weakened, was far from defeated. Their remnants had retreated to the heart of their empire, a heavily fortified sector known as the Sovereign Expanse. Here, they believed they could regroup, draw strength from their loyalists, and make a final stand. It was in this dark corner of the galaxy that the ultimate confrontation would take place, the culmination of humanity's fury and the Council's betrayal. General Nathan Cole and his fleet, along with the United Resistance, knew this battle would be unlike any they had faced before. The Sovereign Expanse was a stronghold protected by immense defenses, shield arrays, weapon platforms, and advanced fleets of Council warships. The path to victory would require more than just brute force. It would demand every ounce of strategy, ingenuity, and courage humanity had to offer. The final push began with a covert mission. A small team of human operatives, including some of the galaxy's most skilled tacticians and engineers, infiltrated the Council's inner sanctum within the Expanse. Their goal was clear: to disable the Council's central command station, the heart of their operations, which controlled the entire fleet and their defense network. The human team knew that if they succeeded, the Council's ability to organize and launch a coordinated defense would be crippled, giving the Resistance a fighting chance in the final battle. As the mission unfolded, the team faced unimaginable challenges. The Council's forces had expected an attack, and their defenses were stronger than ever. The infiltration team had to outwit advanced surveillance systems, avoid deadly traps, and navigate a labyrinth of Council installations, all while racing against the clock. But the team's resolve was unwavering, and after days of relentless effort, they finally breached the heart of the Council's operations. In a daring move, they unleashed a virus, code designed to infiltrate and shut down the Council's defense systems. Within moments, the sovereign Expanse's shields faltered, and its weapons went silent. The signal was given. Humanity's fleet, having prepared for this moment for weeks, launched a full-scale assault on the now vulnerable Council stronghold. The Resistance, emboldened by their earlier victories, moved as one, striking with precision and overwhelming force. The human fleet, joined by their allies from across the galaxy, descended upon the Expanse with a fury that could not be contained. The sky itself seemed to burn as weapons fired from all sides, lighting up the dark void of space. The Council's fleet, though numerous and formidable, was disoriented without their central command. Their warships, once a symbol of invincibility, now seemed like fragile shells, vulnerable to the relentless assault. The human fleet had learned from every battle they had fought, and they used that knowledge to their advantage, striking at the heart of Council ships, taking down their most powerful vessels with brutal efficiency. The battle raged for hours, the sound of explosions and the crackle of energy weapons echoing through the empty vastness of space. But slowly, the tide turned. The Council's forces, unable to recover from the crippling blow dealt by the infiltration team, began to fall apart. One by one, their warships were destroyed, their command centers reduced to smoldering ruins. The Resistance pressed forward, cutting through the last remnants of the Council's military with a fury unmatched by anything the galaxy had ever seen. As the final Council flagship, the Aegis of the Empire, was brought down in a fiery explosion, General Cole's voice rang out across the battlefield, relaying the final command to cease fire. The once mighty Council, which had controlled the galaxy with an iron grip, was no more. The battle had been won. The aftermath of the final confrontation was felt across the galaxy. The human-led Resistance had triumphed, and the Council's reign of terror had come to an end. Across every star system, celebrations erupted. Former Council-controlled worlds, many of them having suffered under their rule for generations, rejoiced at the dawn of a new era. No longer would they live in fear of the Council's manipulative grasp. The galaxy, at last, was free. But for General Nathan Cole and his fellow commanders, there was no time for celebration. They had won the war, but the true work was just beginning. The galaxy was in ruins, and it was up to the united forces to rebuild, not just the infrastructure of star systems, but the very foundation of peace and unity. Humanity, with their unbreakable spirit and hard-won victories, would lead the way into this new age. A galaxy no longer ruled by fear, but by the promise of a better future for all. The final days of the Council's rule had been chaotic, their forces collapsing under the relentless pressure from the united Resistance. But with their destruction, the galaxy stood on the edge of a new era. The old order was gone, and in its place, a new vision was taking shape, one that offered hope, peace, and the possibility of true unity. Humanity, once oppressed and underestimated, had emerged as the unexpected champions of this revolution. The days following the victory were filled with both triumph and sorrow. The war had claimed countless lives, and the cost of freedom had been steep. As humanity and their allies celebrated their hard-won freedom, they also mourned the losses of those who had fought and died for the cause. The scars of war were deep, but the spirit of resilience that had defined humanity from the very beginning endured. General Nathan Cole, now regarded as a hero across the galaxy, stood on the steps of a newly established council hall on Earth, alongside representatives from the former council worlds. His eyes scanned the faces of the people around him. Soldiers, civilians, and leaders from every corner of the galaxy. The time for vengeance had passed. Now it was time for rebuilding. Humanity's fury had been unleashed, but their greatest strength was not their ability to fight. It was their capacity to rebuild, to rise from the ashes, and to forge something greater. With the council gone, the galaxy faced a daunting task. No longer would one race dominate the fate of countless others. Instead, the resistance had united under a common cause, the establishment of a new council, one based on equality and mutual respect. The Alliance of Free Worlds had begun the process of creating a new governing body, one that would ensure every species had a voice, and no power could ever again hold the galaxy in its grip. It was a bold, unprecedented step. A council for the people, not the elites. But this new council wasn't just an idea. It was a reality, born from the sacrifices of countless lives. As leaders gathered from all corners of the galaxy, humanity took the first steps toward a future of cooperation and shared prosperity. The power that had once belonged to the Council was now distributed among the diverse species that had fought for freedom. Humans, with their indomitable will, had proven that they could lead, but they understood that true leadership meant collaboration, not domination. General Cole and his fellow commanders worked tirelessly to ensure that the new council would be governed by wisdom and compassion, not the greed and corruption that had plagued the old order. The galaxy, now united under this new banner of hope, looked to the future with cautious optimism. There would be challenges ahead, rebuilding fractured worlds, healing old wounds, and navigating the complexities of interspecies relations. But for the first time in generations, the galaxy had a chance to move forward without fear of tyranny. As the new council began its work, humanity found themselves not only at the forefront of this monumental change, but also serving as a reminder of the power of the individual species when they stood together. Their victory had been hard-won, but it had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a species that refused to be silenced could reshape the destiny of an entire galaxy. General Cole, standing amidst the new leaders, could feel the weight of history pressing on his shoulders. The war was over, but the journey was just beginning. The galaxy was no longer defined by the Council's reign of terror, but by the collective will of its inhabitants. And humanity, having borne the brunt of the Council's betrayal, would be the guiding light in this new age, a beacon of hope, resilience, and unity in a galaxy finally free. And so, the new dawn rose. A galaxy once bound by fear and oppression now stood united in the promise of peace and prosperity. The story of humanity's fury, unleashed upon the galaxy, was no longer just a tale of vengeance. It was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of unity. The past had been a war, but the future was one of infinite possibilities. The galaxy was now free, and humanity's place within it was secure, not by the might of their weapons, but by the strength of their will to create a better world for all.